Previously on Chat 62.
Why I wanted to become a warrant officer is I wanted to give back to not just the Marine Corps, because me being an instructor is how I gave back to the Marine Corps as an institution. I now wanted to give back to my community and make my community better, meaning like my MOS community better. And I figured the best way for me to do that was to become a warrant officer and help it grow into the new age of technology.
Real quick before we start, we streamlined our contact info. From now on, if you have any questions, feedback, or ideas for future guests, just shoot us an email at chat62podcast@gmail.com. All right, let's go. We're shifting gears. You applied for the Warrant Officer Board in 2018, correct?
Yeah, so I submitted my application in 2017, because that's when the MARA admin stuff comes out. It comes out the year before, and got accepted, and then went off to our Warrant Officer Basic Course up in Quantico, Virginia in 2018. So I was there from late January, graduated April, May timeframe, same year. Went back to 29 Palms, because that's where our follow-on school is at. That's where all our communications schools are for the Marine Corps. So went back to 29 Palms, went through our Warrant Officer Communications course, and then left there right after Christmas time of 2018. First duty station as a warrant officer was at Camp Lejeune. It was my second time being in Camp Lejeune. This time I was with kind of what used to be the MEF headquarters group. You know, it's now like the Marine Information Group is what they're called these days.
Post-production Pete here. John actually meant MEF Information Group. Carry on, John.
Was with the COB battalion, and then we supported like the MEF headquarters element anytime that they needed to go forward or was out in the field or anything like that. So that's what I got to do. I got to plan a lot of that stuff, kind of high level planning for kind of the MEF headquarters element, supporting the G6 directly most of the time.
Rewind back a little bit. Could you tell us what your warrant officer course was like?
Yeah, so the Warrant Officer Basic Course, it's not like what OCS was for unrestricted officers, where that's like OCS is an actual selection school. To become an unrestricted officer, you go through OCS, and then if you graduate from there, then you actually become an unrestricted officer, like the first and second lieutenants. But Warrant Officer Basic Course isn't a selection school like that. The application and the board process is your selection. So once you get there, you are around on the 2nd of February is when you get appointed as a warrant officer. So you do your pinning ceremony and stuff like that. But really, it's essentially teaching you how to be a provisional rifle platoon commander is essentially what WOBIC does. It teaches you all the infantry tactics. So a lot of stuff that we would have done in like MCT, or for like the grunt side, did ITB, Infantry Training Battalion. Yeah. But more from the leadership perspective. So we still did all like the range stuff. We did squad movements, like movement to contact for squads. We did a lot of patrols. We did a lot of hype. But it was also a lot of academics too. We got kind of tested on all of the weapon systems, leadership skills. You had to write 5-paragraph orders. So each student had to lead one type of offensive operation. Sometimes you did multiple. So I ended up doing multiple. Not going to lie, I kind of bombed my first one. It was through the woods and through the hills of Quantico. It was my first time ever leading a patrol, because I'd never done that in my Marine Corps career before, never had to. With it being through the woods, it was more of kind of like a silent movement. And I definitely wasn't used to that either. And so what the cool part was, like, I got to do a lot of things I hadn't done previously, like officially done. Like, have I been on like a foot patrol in Afghanistan? I did, but we didn't really patrol. We just had to move to another location, because the only way to get there was to walk, you know. I never went on any like actual like official patrols. But what the cool part was with this one specifically is we all got kind of lined up in our squad, and our entire squad loaded on an Osprey, and then we got dropped off in an LZ out in the training area, got off, secured the LZ, made our way to the tree line, and then had to patrol to certain, like, there's like 5 or 6 different waypoints we had to hit. And then we get to like a final objective, and then secure the final objective, right? That was like what we had to do. I completely bombed it. It was horrible. I think I definitely overthought it when I was trying to plan out my 5-paragraph order, give our patrol brief and like all that stuff. And it was horrible. Like our instructor threw like three like the RD sims on us. And like, it was not good. We made it to our objective, obviously, but it was not good. So closer to the end of the course, I was told I had to do a second evaluation because we get graded on those things, right? So that kind of goes into our overall evaluation and how our instructor sees us as a leader. And so I did get a second opportunity, and this was it was in Mount is where I got my second opportunity. And by this point in the course, like I felt way more, I think, prepared and more comfortable. And I didn't overthink it. I had a quick, like 5-paragraph order. It wasn't super long. It wasn't a lot of detail, but when I went through and we did our briefing to my squad, I didn't even wait on the instructor, honestly. Like we didn't wait on the instructor like to overhear it. I went through it real quick. Everybody knew exactly what they needed to do. He came back in because he had to take a phone call or something. He came back and says, "Oh, you're done?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Does anybody have any questions?" And nobody had any questions. And so he's like, "What do you guys need to do? What is your team doing? Like your fire team doing?" And they rattled it back off, and he's like, "Okay, let's go then." I definitely felt way more comfortable with that one. I don't know if maybe it's because I had to be quiet in the first one and I didn't know how to really tell people what to do when we're quiet. It's a lot different than being able to say, "Hey, you go do this," right? Like it's much easier to be vocal.
So is it more like hand signal based?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
When we went to Mount, it was a lot more chaotic. There was a lot more gunfire. Like we had blanks and stuff, so that we actually got to fire our weapons, simulated fire, like simulated small arms fire and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was at us as well. I don't know. I felt way more comfortable in that chaos than I did just patrolling through the woods with no opposition. It was almost like second instinct when we got in the Mount and then telling people what they needed to do, where they needed to go, going through from building to building, getting to an objective. Once we got to our objective, obviously the instructor is like, "Oh, you got to follow an objective. Now you got to go to this building," right? Kind of like those types of things, throwing us in, seeing how we react to things that weren't planned, I guess. But no, like I definitely think I did way better there. My staff platoon commander said he could definitely tell a difference and was very surprised at how I was able to kind of restructure and how I was on that evaluation, especially based off of the first one.
It was basically improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Yeah, pretty much. But I definitely learned a lot about myself during WOBIT. I really found where my strengths and my weaknesses were mentally and physically. I was able to push through and overcome those, but there was a lot of things, like there's a lot of hiking, like and everything. Like anytime we were in the field, we had full kit on, and me at the time, I was only 175 pounds, maybe 180 pounds at most, and I was our fire team's saw gunner, so I had to carry a saw every time we were in the field. Yeah, so but no, it was fun though. It was a lot of fun. It was difficult, but not impossible. Probably boot camp, like recruit training. You know, you get there, you're like, "Oh man, why am I here?" I had a little bit of feeling like that a little bit when we first got there. You meet a lot of cool people, a lot of different types of people. So like 2 of the guys in my fire team, they were EOD, and then the other 2 were Intel Marines. So like I really got to meet a lot of different types of people and stuff around. So that was really cool. I still talk to some of them even still today. I mean, that was 8 years ago almost.
So you complete your course and they pin your, and forgive me if I'm saying it wrong, your warrant officer bars on you. What's that feeling going through your head?
So we actually get appointed and pinned at the beginning of the course, because again, you don't complete the course to become a warrant officer. Like you're a warrant officer when you get there, essentially. Like you're already selected, already approved for the promotion. And so on February 2nd, at the very beginning of the course, because we get there around like the 25th or so, 28th of January, is kind of like our in processing. That first week is like in processing. And by the end of that week, you get everything. You do your initial PFT, all that good stuff, you know, to make sure that you qualify to continue the course, because there is that part of it. You do have to qualify to continue to pass the PFT. But then on February 2nd, you get pinned because that's your appointment ceremony. Get pinned, and then throughout the course, you're a warrant officer the entire time you're in the course.
Your first duty station as a warrant officer, you said, is in Camp Lejeune.
Before I got to Camp Lejeune, so once I graduated Wobick, I had to go back to 29 Palms because one, that's where I was stationed at. So either way, I would have to go back there anyways for PCSing. But our Warrant Officer Communications course is also in 29 Palms there at McSess. So I spent about another 5-6 months there after I graduated Wobick because I had to go through our Warrant Officer Communications course. And then really, it was just teaching us how to be planners, getting us more technical hands-on for installing and configuring some of the different areas that we would need to understand and be able to plan to once we got back to the fleet as brand new warrant officers. So did that, then got to Camp Lejeune, and literally right after Christmas, bought a house here in the Jacksonville area. And yeah, I got here, and my battalion commander, so glad I had him as my battalion commander because he was actually my first company commander when I was an instructor at McSess as well. So I already had a good working relationship, had a good rapport with him. He was also excited that I was coming to work at his battalion as well because he knew the work ethic and everything from being around when I was an instructor. So that was actually really good. It really helped me settle in too when I first got there. Because I was a little nervous. I was like, man, what if I'm not good at this? Kind of get that imposter syndrome, even though, it happens to all of us. Like, man, what if I don't do well? What if I don't plan correctly? Stuff like that. But got there, had some other really good chief warrant officers there to mentor me, to kind of lean on and teach me the ways of being a warrant officer, which was nice. I definitely went to the right place, in my opinion, like for me to progress my career and really understand how to be a warrant officer and what that really meant in our community.
My perception of a warrant officer is pretty, how do I say it? I didn't know what you guys did, to be honest. So, I reported directly to a warrant officer back when I was in my last year in the Corps. And I kind of had the gist, okay, you guys are an expert of your field. And that was 26 years ago. So I had to refresh. I'm like, oh, fuck. Okay. That's why, you become a warrant officer. You become an expert in your field. And I'm going to throw a random ass question at you.
Yeah.
Do Marines treat you differently once you became sir? Like when you returned back to 29 Palms after your course?
Not really. And I think it's because most of the junior Marines that were around McSess were all students. So they didn't really see me when I was a staff sergeant.
Okay.
Because a new group of students had already come in. Right.
Cycling. Yeah.
Yeah. And the instructor cadre I had there, we became really close and really good friends. And again, I still even talk to them some today, and they had great respect for me getting accepted. There were a couple of them that also applied for warrant officer on the same board that I did. They didn't get selected. They weren't mad about it. They were happy that I got selected. They thought I was deserving of it. And so it was almost like it wasn't like a belligerent sir. It was just like they overly was motivated to call me sir, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. And then a couple of them got selected the very next year on the very next year's warrant officer board, which was also really deserving for them as well. So no, nobody really treated me different from being a staff sergeant to a warrant officer. And I think it's just because of the relationship I'd built with the Marines that were around me that I worked with closely.
You get to Camp Lejeune. What year is that?
So that would have been I officially checked in January of 2019. So my travel time was really around Christmas and New Year's. So that was my travel time. So I didn't officially check in until early January of 2019.
And what was it like being stationed out there back in Camp Lejeune?
It was my second time in Camp Lejeune, but the first time we lived on base. And I will say Jacksonville and Camp Lejeune as a whole had grown a lot in the time that I'd been in 29 Palms. So there's a lot of change, a lot of growth. So there's a lot more stuff to do around than the first time I was here. But also the first time I was here, I was deploying and always in the field. So I really wasn't even home a lot the last time either.
Yeah.
So I think that was the really biggest change for me being back here is I'm at home a lot more. Yeah, we still go to the field. We still do exercises and stuff like that, but there was no real deployments on the horizon for us at that time. To be honest, we did a lot of NATO level type of exercises a lot. Participated in probably like 2 or 3, I believe, if I remember correctly, 2 for sure, where we supported NATO level exercises, where the MEF was the Mar 4 command at that level, and support UCOM, stuff like that. So that was really cool. So I got a lot of experiences outside of not just like Marine Corps based type of support, but actual like international and like allied type support and integration and communications and stuff. So that was kind of cool. I will say the biggest difference I noticed from being a warrant officer and a staff sergeant is how like senior officers look at you and talk to you and listen to you. Even as a staff sergeant, officers still would listen, but it was the lieutenants, some captains, those would be the main ones that would really pay attention to what you're saying and listen. But as a warrant officer, you have a lot of influence over majors, lieutenant colonels, full bird colonels. Even like as a warrant officer, you have a lot of influence over them. And it was kind of cool to see how much when you spoke about things like technical things and planning around communications, how they listened to you a lot differently than when I was enlisted. That one kind of threw me for a little bit when as a brand new warrant officer. Again, I always revert back to like the team of other chief, like the other warrant officers and like the chief warrant officers I had when I first got there, kind of helping me learn and teaching me the way of what that really means to be a chief warrant officer in the Marine Corps and in our community, and how much influence we really can have. And not even just influence on like the senior officers, like the influence that the staff NCOs, like the staff sergeants and belows, and even some of the gunnies and below, how they look at you differently as a warrant officer or a chief warrant officer than the junior Marines look at their staff sergeants and gunnies, right? Like, I'm not bashing the staff sergeants and gunnies in the fields, right? But like in the community, but like you said, like when you work for a warrant officer, you're around a warrant officer, like, man, what do they really do? It's kind of like there's a mystique to it.
Yeah,
like,
there
to
is.
Being a warrant officer, right?
There is, yeah.
I enjoyed being a warrant officer because it gave me the opportunity not to just plan and be technical, but it allowed me the opportunity to teach. And that was one thing I loved about being an instructor, was being in the classroom and being able to teach Marines. Like I truly enjoyed that. Once we were in a classroom, I didn't care if they said yes, staff sergeant, or no, staff sergeant. Like, that's not what we were there to be, right? Like, they learned all that stuff in MCT and recruit training, like that's not what we were there to do. I was there to teach them a technical craft and to be a basic data Marine, right? Like, so I wanted to focus in on the academic side of things. And so I really enjoyed teaching. And then when I became a warrant officer, I found the opportunity where I still was able to do that, just in a different setting, in a different capacity, right? So instead of having a class of 20 entry-level Marines teaching them a curriculum, I got to have maybe a handful of Marines and teaching them real life stuff that they're doing to support an actual exercise, right? Like that, how we turn things like they were having issues or having problems or troubleshooting. I would try to always turn that into a teaching moment. Now, I wouldn't do it for them half the time. I would make them do it,
Right.
But I would teach them how to, like, the big thing I would always try to do is, okay, well, what is the actual issue? And then I would have them tell me, kind of that teach back type of training, I really wasn't teaching them per se. Like, they were really teaching themselves, but the way that I would structure it would kind of help them get to a resolution most of the time.
It's almost like you had it like deconstruct, right?
Yeah.
In a way so you can construct it again.
Yeah, no, exactly. Right. Because a lot of times they were just overthinking it, or they were missing something small, And so I would make them slow down and truly think about everything, and then tell me what they think the problem is. Right. And then I would be like, okay, well, why is that? Why do you think that's the problem? Figure out what their thought process is and how they get to things and think about things or see things. Because being able to do that really tells me exactly how they operate. And that tells me how I can, I can understand their thought process, right? Because then that helps me understand how I need to either word or construct how I'm going to tell them something. You know what I mean?
Because everybody learns at different levels, different paces.
Yep, absolutely.
That's an excellent way to approach it. March 13th, 2020 comes. The world's shutting down. You're the first Marine that I've interviewed that actually served during the pandemic. What was happening during that time as the world was shutting down?
I'm going to kind of rewind a little bit to earlier that year. So the reason I want to do this is kind of set the picture of where my mind was when COVID first, like when it was announced like globally that COVID happened. So in January of 2020, myself, some other chief officers, and two of the contractors that worked with us closely on some specific things, we were actually in Potsdam, Germany for a planning conference for a more of a NATO level exercise. We were there for a planning conference in Germany with all these allied nations. We're all in the same room, talking, collaborating, planning, all that good stuff. We were there for about a week. And so also got to go, we weren't on an actual military installation. We stayed at a hotel. So we got to go out. We rented a car, got to drive around, got to go like sightseeing, all that stuff. So we get back from that also in January. We continue planning. And then all of a sudden, and we were supposed to actually execute this exercise in April or May of that same year. So when COVID hit, like all of that stopped. They were still trying to do it, but we couldn't. And so like things got delayed. And then there was, I want to say, if I remember correctly, like 3 weeks or so, almost a month to where we couldn't be in the office. It might have been less than, it might have been closer to 3 weeks. It definitely wasn't really as long as I thought it probably should be. We had to work from home, and it was weird because it was the first time I did like accountability by text message. Every morning, do accountability by text message, and then that'd be about it. And like I had my unclassified work computer at home, so I could still check my email and do like all the unclass stuff, which, to be honest, wasn't really that much. Most of the especially when it was kind of like planning the exercises and getting things configured and set up, and like that was all on the classified side of the house. So we couldn't even really do a lot of that. So there wasn't a lot we really could do. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely different. And then when they told us we could start coming back into the office, we had to do kind of like almost like a left and right. So like half of us were in the office on like Mondays, and I would be in the office on Mondays and Wednesdays. The other ones would be like Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays would be a remote day. It was, I don't know. Nobody ever actually got any work done doing it like that. Right? Like you never did, because the people that were out on the days you were in were the people you needed to talk to most of the time.
A lot of hit and miss.
Yeah. So you really did get to work there a lot. And so I think we did like maybe 2 weeks of that, 2-3 weeks of that when we got back. And then everybody started coming back in. And then that's when everybody started getting sick, is when everybody started coming back. And again, that's the reason I always say is like, I think we rushed this a little too much and came back a little too early, because I contracted COVID during this time. Like when everybody started coming back in the office.
Early on, right? You were one of the...
Yeah, wow. I got COVID early on. And this was like right before the DOD mandated the vaccinations.
Oh.
Right? This was right before that. And so like I got sick. Like I was out for almost 2 weeks. Like it put me down. I was down hard for about a week and then recovering for another week. And when I got back to work, like I was still recovering and from being sick when the mandate came out, right? And the CDC's guidance at the time was no, you should not get the vaccination. And if you within the last, I think it was like 3 weeks, 3 full weeks of your last symptom, like that was their guidance. Like if you have had COVID within the last 3 weeks and you still had symptoms, if you haven't been symptom free for 3 weeks, you should not get the vaccination, right? Like I think it was something like that. So I get back day 2, day 1, I'm back from and this is like 2 weeks. This is maybe a week and a half shy of being like really almost deathly sick with COVID. My OPSO comes in and is like, "Hey, you need to go get your vaccination." I was like, "I'm not getting it right now. Like that's not happening." Like the CDC says it's like, well, the DOD says you're supposed to have it, and you're past the deadline, so you got to go get it. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." And then like 2 days later, they're like, "Hey, here's a 6105. You got to say that you're refusing to take the vaccination." I was like, "No, I'm not refusing to take it. I'm just saying I'm not taking it right now." Again, being a warrant officer, I think if I was enlisted, it'd probably been a lot different type of conversation.
Yeah.
Right. But like as a chief warrant officer, I was already a Chief Warrant Officer 2 at this time. No, yeah, because I was a Chief Warrant Officer 2 this time because I got commissioned to Chief Warrant Officer 2 in August of 2019. So I was already a Chief Warrant Officer 2. So yeah, this conversation, I was like, yeah, absolutely not. I'm not doing this. Like, no, like I will wait a couple of days. Like, I'm also not signing that paper. Like, nope, ain't happening. And so I ended up going, instead of getting the one on base they wanted, it was like two different, it was like the 2 series shot or 3 series shot or whatever it was. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So I ended up going to our county health department and got the one shot, the Johnson & Johnson, got the one and done. Yep. Got my little certificate saying I got my vaccination. Went back into my officer's office, say, hey, I got my vaccination. We're good. And like I said, like we were back in like full operations essentially within like 3-4 months of COVID, like being like globally like notified. Yeah.
Did leadership feel different during that season of COVID? I know you had to have a remote check-in or text check-in, and things like that. But how was that leadership? How did it feel different?
I will say, like, it was different because you couldn't really influence anything remotely like you could when you're face to face, right? Yeah. Like the junior Marines that I was around, like they didn't have anything to do because they couldn't work on the gear. They couldn't be in the office, they couldn't be together to work on the gear. So like they didn't really have anything to do. There wasn't much I could do, honestly. Like, so it was just making sure people were alive and weren't getting sick, and that was really about it, honestly. I think if it had been longer, if we would have been out of office longer, it might have been more of a challenge. I had a really small group of Marines that were in my charge, and they were much more mature Marines. They were hand selected to come work for us up in our office. So it wasn't like brand new Marines out of the schoolhouse that really worked for us. Most of them were NCOs, sergeants and corporals. I think there was like maybe one or two lance corporals, but most of them were mature and already kind of shown proficiency in our MOS. And that's what we needed to work for us, were those types of folks. So for me, it really wasn't that much different because we already had kind of, I wouldn't say leadership from afar, because I was always there, and supporting them and helping them out. But a lot of them, they could just kind of, they knew what they needed to get done. And I really didn't have to double check a lot of times, because it was just that group of Marine that they already knew what they needed to do. And most of them had been there even before I got to the battalion anyways. They already had been doing it for a while, They're
pretty self-sufficient.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody, a lot of us were already self-sufficient at this time. So yeah, and I'd already built trust in them to get things done and not mess around and not do stupid stuff, So yeah. I didn't worry about it. They text me like, live, yep, cool, all right. That's kind of how it would go.
Jon Cole's story continues in episode 53 of Chat 62. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a star rating. In the meantime, stay the course and Semper Fi.
Struggling? You're not weak. You're human. Dial 988, then press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line. Train support that understands veterans. Stay the course. Thank you, Ozzy.